"You'll never amount to anything," he shouted, shoving her onto the ballroom floor while his family and mistress watched. She stayed silent, tears falling. Then the security team surrounded him. "Sir, you just assaulted the true owner of this mansion. Miss Harrison owns everything you're standing on right now." The ballroom was filled with 500 of the city's most elite guests. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they seemed to touch heaven itself. The marble floors gleamed under soft golden light, and the sound of classical music floated through the air like expensive perfume. This was the Harrison Estate Mansion, a $60 billion property that stood as a monument to wealth and power. But on this night, none of the guests knew the truth about who really owned the ground they were standing on, and the woman who held the keys to this empire was about to be pushed to the floor like she was nothing. Lenora stood near the back of the ballroom, her hands folded in front of her, head slightly bowed. She was 32 years old, beautiful in a quiet way that didn't demand attention. She wore a simple dress, nothing flashy, nothing expensive. Her husband had told her to keep it simple tonight. He said she embarrassed him when she tried too hard, so she didn't try at all. She just existed in the corner of this magnificent room, hoping to be invisible. But invisibility wasn't something Darnell Washington was going to allow her tonight. Darnell was 34, tall and handsome, in the way that made people trust him before they should. He had charm like a weapon, and he knew exactly when to use it. Tonight he used it on everyone except his wife. He stood in the center of a circle of important people, laughing too loud, gesturing with expensive whiskey in his hand. And on his arm, where his wife should have been, stood Candace Moore. Candace was everything Lenora wasn't. Bold, loud, confident in a way that demanded you look at her. She wore diamonds that caught the light with every movement, and her laugh cut through the room like glass breaking. She was Darnell's colleague, or at least that's what he told people, but the way her hand rested on his chest, the way she whispered in his ear and made him smile, told a different story. Everyone in that room could see it, and Darnell didn't even try to hide it anymore. Lenora watched from across the room, her heart breaking in slow motion. This was her life now. Public humiliation, silent suffering, and the worst part was that she had started to believe she deserved it. "You see that woman over there?" Darnell's voice cut through the music and conversation. He was pointing at her. Lenora's stomach dropped. Several heads turned to look at her, and she wanted to disappear into the marble beneath her feet. "That's my wife," Darnell continued, his voice dripping with something that sounded like disgust. "Can you believe I brought her to an event like this? Look at her. She doesn't even know how to carry herself around people of quality." The people in his circle looked uncomfortable, but they didn't defend her. They never did. Candace, however, smiled. A cold, cruel smile that said she was enjoying every second of this. Then another voice joined in. Beverly Washington, Darnell's mother, appeared beside him like she'd been waiting for her cue. She was 58, dressed in designer everything, with a face that had forgotten how to smile with kindness. "My son deserves so much better than some nobody," she said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "I told him from the beginning she wasn't right for this family, but did he listen? No." Lenora felt the tears building behind her eyes, but she held them back. She had learned not to cry in public. Crying only made Darnell angrier, so she stood there, frozen, while these people tore her apart with their words. But Darnell wasn't finished. He walked toward her, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. The crowd parted for him like he was royalty. Candace followed, her heels clicking behind him. Beverly stayed back but watched with satisfaction. Lenora's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that look in his eyes. She had seen it before in private when he was at his worst, but he had never looked at her like that in public. "You're embarrassing me," he said quietly when he reached her, but his quiet was somehow louder than shouting. "You're embarrassing the Washington name just by standing here." "Darnell, please," Lenora whispered. "I didn't do anything. I've been quiet all night." "That's the problem," Candace said, stepping closer. "You're always quiet, always playing the victim. Some of us are tired of watching the sad little orphan act." The word orphan hit Lenora like a slap. She had lost her parents when she was too young to remember them. Her grandparents had raised her with more love than most people ever knew. But Candace used the word like it was poison. Darnell grabbed Lenora's arm, his fingers digging into her skin. "I told you to leave," he hissed. "I told you not to come tonight, but you just had to show up and ruin everything, didn't you?" "This is a charity event," Lenora said, her voice shaking. "You told me we were coming together. You told me this morning." "I changed my mind," Darnell snapped. "Now get out before you ruin my reputation any more than you already have." Beverly appeared beside them, her voice like acid. "You're dead weight, dear. You always have been. My son carried you for 5 years, and this is how you repay him, by clinging to him like some desperate charity case." The people around them were watching now, not helping, just watching, like this was entertainment. Lenora looked around the room, searching for one kind face, one person who might step in and say this was wrong, but she found none. Just curious eyes and whispered conversations. "Please," Lenora said again, tears finally breaking free and running down her face. "I love you, Darnell. I've only ever tried to love you." "Love?" Candace laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "He doesn't love you. He never did. He felt sorry for you and you trapped him. But tonight, he's finally free." Darnell's face twisted with rage. "You want to know the truth, Lenora? You'll never amount to anything. You're nothing. You came from nothing, and you'll leave with nothing." And then he shoved her. It wasn't a gentle push. It was violence, pure and simple. Lenora stumbled backward, her heels catching on the hem of her dress. She reached out for something, anything to catch herself. But there was only air, and then she was falling. The marble floor rushed up to meet her, and when she hit, the impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Pain exploded through her shoulder and hip. Her vision blurred. The ballroom gasped, but still nobody moved to help her. Lenora lay there on the cold marble, tears streaming down her face, body aching. She could hear Beverly's voice above her, dramatic as always. She could hear Candace's heels clicking away. She could hear Darnell's heavy breathing as he stood over her like a conqueror. And then something fell from her dress. It was small, silver, hanging from a delicate chain that had broken in the fall. The pendant slid across the marble floor, catching the chandelier light. Lenora reached for it weakly, but she was too hurt, too broken to move quickly. An elderly security guard saw it first. His eyes went wide. He was 70 if he was a day, with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen a lot in his years working this estate. His name was Mr. Wilson, though nobody in this crowd knew that. They never asked the names of the help. But Mr. Wilson knew things. He knew the history of this mansion. He knew the symbols and the secrets. And he knew exactly what that pendant meant. He moved quickly for a man his age, kneeling beside Lenora. "Miss," he whispered urgently, helping her sit up. Are you all right?" Lenora nodded weakly, not trusting her voice. Mr. Wilson picked up the pendant, and his hands trembled as he looked at the engraving, L.H. Harrison Legacy. His face went pale. He looked at Lenora, really looked at her, and recognition dawned in his eyes like sunrise. He pulled out his radio with shaking hands and spoke into it quickly, quietly. "Code Harrison, I repeat, Code Harrison, she's here. Send Mr. Vincent immediately." Darnell, Beverly, and Candace were already walking away, laughing together, celebrating what they thought was a victory. They didn't see Mr. Wilson's face. They didn't hear his radio call. They were too busy congratulating themselves for finally putting Lenora in what they believed was her place. But Lenora saw it. Through her tears, through her pain, she saw the look on Mr. Wilson's face, and something inside her shifted. A memory stirred, her grandmother's voice, soft and loving, from years ago. "When the time is right, baby, you'll know." The narrator's voice became softer, more reflective. But what they didn't know was about to destroy everything they thought they had. To understand how Lenora ended up on that floor, broken and humiliated in her own home, we have to go back to the beginning, back to a small wooden house in rural Georgia, where a little girl was raised by two people who taught her that wealth had nothing to do with money. Thomas and Ruth Harrison lived simply. Their house had 3 rooms, a porch that creaked when you walked on it, and a garden out back where Ruth grew vegetables every summer. Thomas worked at the local mill, came home tired every night, but always had energy to lift young Lenora onto his lap and tell her stories. Ruth cooked meals that filled the house with warmth and love, and she sang while she worked, old hymns that made everything feel safe. Lenora was 2 years old when she came to live with them. She didn't remember her parents, didn't remember the accident that took them away. All she knew was the love of her grandparents, and to her, that was enough. Thomas would take her fishing on Sunday afternoons, teaching her patience and peace. "True wealth isn't in what you show, baby girl," he would say, his voice deep and steady like the earth itself. "It's in who you are when nobody's watching." Ruth taught her different lessons. How to be kind even when the world was cruel. How to hold your head high even when people tried to push you down. And she gave Lenora a gift that would change everything, though neither of them knew it at the time. It was a silver pendant on a delicate chain. Ruth placed it around 8-year-old Lenora's neck on her birthday, and her hands shook slightly as she did. "This belonged to your mother," Ruth said softly. "Never take it off, baby. It's more important than you know." Young Lenora touched the pendant, feeling the engraving beneath her small fingers. "What does it say, Grandma?" Ruth smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "It says you come from love, and that's all you need to know right now." "But who were my parents?" Lenora asked, not for the first time. She asked this question often, and the answer was always the same gentle redirect. Thomas and Ruth exchanged a look, the kind of look that held entire conversations without words. "Your parents loved you more than life itself," Thomas said finally. "One day, baby girl, you'll understand everything. But right now, all you need to know is that you are loved, you are valued, and you are exactly who you're supposed to be." Lenora grew up believing she was nobody special, just a girl raised by her grandparents in a small town where everyone knew everyone and nothing much changed from year to year. She went to church every Sunday. She helped Ruth in the garden. She did her homework at the kitchen table while Thomas read the newspaper. It was a simple life, but it was full of love. She never understood why her grandparents always avoided certain questions. why they never talked about her parents' families, why there were no other relatives who came to visit, why Ruth sometimes cried when she looked at Lenora in certain lights. These were mysteries, but they were gentle mysteries, wrapped in love, so Lenora didn't push. The years passed. Lenora finished high school, went to nursing school, became the first person in her family to get a college degree. Thomas and Ruth were so proud they cried at her graduation. She got a job at a hospital in the city, moved into a small apartment, sent money home every month, even though her grandparents insisted she didn't need to. And then she met Darnell Washington. He was a patient's family member, worried about his sick aunt, sitting in the waiting room, looking lost. Lenora brought him coffee and sat with him, talking softly, helping him feel less alone. When his aunt recovered, Darnell asked for her number, said he couldn't stop thinking about her kindness, said she was different from every other woman he'd ever met. For 6 months, Darnell was perfect. He brought her flowers, took her to nice restaurants she couldn't afford on her own, told her she was beautiful in her simplicity, said he loved that she wasn't materialistic or fake like the women he usually met. He said her humble background made her real, made her special. Lenora fell in love with who she thought he was. They got married quickly at a courthouse with just a few friends present. Thomas and Ruth came, and Ruth held Lenora's hand tightly before the ceremony. "Baby," she said, her voice worried. "Are you sure? You've only known him 6 months." "I love him, Grandma," Lenora said, smiling. "He loves me. Isn't that enough?" Ruth opened her mouth to say something else, but Thomas put his hand on her shoulder. "Let her be happy," he said quietly. "She deserves happiness." But Ruth's eyes held worry. She pulled Lenora aside one more time. "If he ever hurts you," she whispered fiercely, "you come home. You hear me? You come straight home." Lenora laughed it off. "He won't hurt me, Grandma. He's a good man." Ruth just squeezed her hand and said nothing more. Within a month of the wedding, Darnell changed. The kindness disappeared like it had never existed. He criticized everything Lenora did. Her cooking wasn't good enough. Her clothes were embarrassing. Her voice was too soft. She didn't know how to talk to important people. She made him look bad in front of his friends. When Lenora tried to talk to him about it, he told her she was being dramatic, told her she should be grateful he married her at all. "Nobody else would have taken you," he said coldly. "A little orphan girl with no family, no money, no connections. I saved you from a life of nothing." Then Beverly moved in. Darnell's mother had opinions about everything, and every opinion cut like a knife. She redecorated Lenora's home without asking, threw away things that mattered to Lenora, calling them cheap trash, made Lenora cook elaborate meals, and then criticized every dish, called her lazy, stupid, worthless, and Darnell never once defended his wife. He just stood there and let his mother tear her apart. 2 years into the marriage, Ruth passed away peacefully in her sleep. Lenora was devastated. She had lost her greatest source of love and wisdom. Thomas had died the year before, and now Lenora was truly alone in the world, except for a husband who didn't love her and a mother-in-law who hated her. But before Ruth died, she gave Lenora one final gift. It was an envelope sealed with wax, thick with papers inside. Ruth's hands trembled as she held it out. "When the time is right, baby, you'll know when to open this," she whispered from her hospital bed. "It'll explain everything about who you really are, about your parents, about where you come from, about what belongs to you." Lenora took the envelope, confused. "What do you mean, Grandma? What belongs to me?" But Ruth just smiled, her eyes full of secrets, and sadness. You'll see. When the time is right, don't open it until then. You'll know when that moment comes. Those were the last words Ruth ever spoke to her. She died that night, taking her secrets with her. Lenora kept the envelope in a safety deposit box at the bank. For 2 years, it sat there unopened. She thought about it sometimes, wondered what could possibly be inside. But she respected her grandmother's wishes. She waited for the right time, whatever that meant. Meanwhile, her life with Darnell became unbearable. Candace Moore entered the picture in year 3. Darnell said she was just a colleague, someone he worked with on business deals. But Lenora saw the way Candace looked at her husband, saw the way Candace touched his arm a little too long, laughed a little too loud at his jokes. When Lenora mentioned it, Darnell exploded. "You're paranoid," he shouted. "You're jealous and insecure because you know you're not good enough for me. Candace is a professional, successful woman. Everything you're not." After that, Candace started appearing everywhere. At their home for business dinners, at social events on Darnell's arm while Lenora was told to stay home, in photographs that appeared on social media standing close to Darnell, looking like they belonged together in a way that he and Lenora never did. People started talking. Lenora's co-workers at the hospital whispered when she walked by. Someone started a rumor that Lenora was mentally unstable, that she had violent outbursts, that she was stealing from the hospital. Lenora couldn't prove it, but she knew Darnell was behind it. Everything started falling apart. Then she lost her job. The hospital said they had to let her go due to behavioral concerns. Lenora tried to defend herself, but nobody would listen. She came home devastated, and Darnell's response was ice cold. "Maybe if you weren't so unstable, you could hold down a job," he said, not even looking up from his phone. Beverly added her poison. "My son is supporting a grown woman who can't even work. How embarrassing." Lenora became a ghost in her own life. She stopped fighting, stopped defending herself, stopped hoping things would get better. She just existed, moving through each day in quiet despair, waiting for something, anything, to change. And then the phone call came. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Lenora was cleaning the house because Beverly had complained it was dirty, even though it wasn't. The phone rang. Darnell answered it, his face going strange as he listened. "Who is this?" he asked sharply. A pause. "No, there's nobody here by that name." Another pause. "This is a scam. Stop calling this number." He hung up and looked at Lenora with suspicion. "Someone asking for Lenora Harrison. What kind of scam are you running?" Lenora's heart stopped. Harrison, her maiden name, the name on her pendant, the name from her childhood. "What did they want?" she asked quietly. "None of your business," Darnell snapped. "It was a scam. Forget about it." But Lenora couldn't forget about it. That night, while Darnell was out with Candace, Lenora went to the bank. She opened the safety deposit box. She took out the envelope that had sat there for 2 years, and with shaking hands, she broke the seal. Inside were letters, documents, photographs, and the truth. The first letter was written in her mother's handwriting, elegant and beautiful. "My dearest Lenora, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you are old enough to know the truth. Your father and I loved you more than words can express. We are Marcus and Diana Harrison. Our family built an empire worth billions, but with that wealth came danger. There were people who would harm you to get to our fortune. So we made a choice. We asked my parents, Thomas and Ruth, to raise you in secret, away from the Harrison name, away from the spotlight and the threats. We wanted you to grow up safe, loved, and humble. We wanted you to know your worth had nothing to do with money. But baby girl, you need to know who you are. You are the sole heir to the Harrison dynasty. The estate, the holdings, the fortune, all of it belongs to you. It has been managed by trustees until your 32nd birthday. On that day, you must claim your inheritance. The head trustee is Mr. Vincent. He will find you when the time comes. We love you forever. We are so sorry we couldn't watch you grow up. But know that everything we did was to protect you and give you a real life full of real love. You are Lenora Harrison. You are powerful. You are valuable. Never forget that. Love always. Your mother. Lenora read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold the paper. There were more documents. Proof of her identity, birth certificates, trust documents, property deeds. And then she saw it. The Harrison Estate Mansion. The $60 billion property she had been to dozens of times for Darnell's business events. The place where she was always told she didn't belong. She owned it. She had always owned it. Today was her 32nd birthday. Nobody had mentioned it. Darnell had forgotten, as he did every year. Beverly certainly didn't care, but the universe hadn't forgotten. And neither had Mr. Vincent, apparently, because that phone call was him trying to reach her. Lenora sat in that bank for 2 hours, just holding the letters, letting the truth wash over her. She wasn't nobody. She had never been nobody. She was a Harrison. Her parents had been Marcus and Diana Harrison, beloved philanthropists who died in a car accident when she was 2. The accident that orphaned her had been investigated. Some suspected it wasn't truly an accident, which was why her grandparents had hidden her away. Everything made sense now. Why her grandparents lived so simply despite the occasional mysterious deposits into their account. Why they never talked about extended family. Why Ruth had been so worried when Lenora married Darnell. They were protecting her, keeping her safe until she was old enough to inherit. And tonight, there was a gala at the Harrison estate. Darnell had told her not to come, said she would embarrass him. But that gala was being held on her property, in her home, to celebrate charities funded by her family's foundation. Lenora made a phone call. Mr. Vincent's office, a professional voice answered. "This is Lenora Harrison," she said, her voice steady for the first time in years. "I believe you've been trying to reach me." There was a sharp intake of breath. "Miss Harrison, yes, we've been trying to contact you. Your 32nd birthday is today. The trust activates tonight. We need you at the estate for the gala." "I know," Lenora said quietly. "I'll be there." "Miss Harrison, there's one more thing you should know. Your husband, he doesn't know who you are, does he?" "No," Lenora whispered, "he doesn't." "Then tonight will be very interesting," Mr. Vincent said carefully. "I'll have security prepared." Lenora went back to that gala, not because she wanted revenge, not because she wanted to humiliate Darnell the way he had humiliated her. She went because it was time. Time to stop hiding, time to stop being small, time to claim not just her inheritance, but her dignity. When she arrived, Darnell had shoved her to the floor, called her nothing, told her she would never amount to anything, and for a moment, lying on that cold marble with her body aching and her heart broken, Lenora had felt like maybe he was right. But then Mr. Wilson saw the pendant, made the call, and everything changed. Darnell, Beverly, and Candace were celebrating what they thought was their victory. They stood together near the bar, Candace's hand possessively on Darnell's chest, Beverly sipping champagne with satisfaction. They were laughing about something, probably about Lenora, enjoying what they believed was their moment. The ballroom doors opened. Lenora walked back in, and this time she wasn't broken. She held her head high. Her tears were gone. Mr. Vincent walked beside her, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Behind them, a team of security guards moved with purpose. The room fell silent. Every head turned. The music stopped. Darnell's face went from shock to rage in seconds. He stormed toward her, fury radiating from every step. "What the hell are you doing here? I told you to leave. How dare you come back and embarrass me again?" Beverly joined him, her face twisted with disgust. "Security! Remove this woman immediately. She's disturbing the peace." Candace laughed, that sharp, cruel sound. "Some people really don't know when they're not wanted. This is pathetic." But Lenora said nothing. She just looked at them calmly, and in her silence there was power they had never seen before. Mr. Vincent stepped forward, his voice cutting through the room with authority. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Darnell turned on him. "Who are you? Get out of my way before I have you removed too." "My name is Gregory Vincent," the man said smoothly. "I'm the head trustee of the Harrison family estate, and I'm afraid you're making a terrible mistake, Mr. Washington." The name Harrison sent a ripple through the crowd. Everyone in this room knew what that name meant. The Harrisons were legendary. Their wealth was old, their power absolute. But the family had disappeared from public life years ago after the tragic death of Marcus and Diana Harrison. "I don't care who you are," Darnell snarled. "This is a private event. That woman," he pointed at Lenora, "is my soon-to-be ex-wife, and she's not welcome here." "That woman," Mr. Vincent said, his voice like steel wrapped in silk, "is Miss Lenora Harrison, the daughter of Marcus and Diana Harrison, and the sole owner of every single thing you see in this room." The ballroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Darnell's face went blank, like his brain couldn't process the words. Beverly's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble. Candace took a step back, her confidence cracking like thin ice. "That's impossible," Darnell whispered. "She's nobody. She's an orphan from Georgia. She worked as a nurse. She has nothing." "She has everything," Mr. Vincent corrected. "This mansion, valued at $60 billion, it belongs to her. The Harrison Foundation that funds this gala, it's hers. The entire Harrison dynasty, all the assets, all the properties, all the wealth. It all belongs to Miss Lenora Harrison, and it always has." He pulled out legal documents, held them up for the crowd to see. Miss Harrison was raised in protection after her parents' deaths. Today is her 32nd birthday, the day the trust activates and she takes full control of her inheritance. She has been the rightful owner of this property since birth, though it was held in trust until now. Darnell's face was white. No, that can't be. She didn't. "I never told you my real last name," Lenora spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but clear. "You never asked. You married me thinking I was nobody, and when you believed I had nothing, you showed me exactly who you are." She looked at Beverly, and her voice didn't waver. "You called me worthless, dead weight, an orphan with no value, but I own the ground your son is standing on. I own this building. I own everything you thought made you important." Then she turned to Candace. "You wanted what you thought he had. You stood beside him while he destroyed me because you believed he was successful, powerful, worth having. But he has nothing. He never did." Mr. Vincent pulled out his phone. swiped a few times, and then projected security footage onto the ballroom screens. There it was, Darnell shoving Lenora to the floor, her falling, the impact, the cruelty. "Mr. Washington," Mr. Vincent said coldly, "you just physically assaulted the owner of this property. You committed battery against Miss Harrison in her own home. Security has been recording everything." The head of security, a tall man with kind eyes, Mr. Wilson, the same guard who had seen the pendant, stepped forward. "Sir, ma'am, miss," he said, looking at Darnell, Beverly, and Candace in turn, "you need to leave this property immediately." Darnell tried to salvage it. Panic filled his eyes as reality crashed down on him. "I'm her husband. I have rights. You can't throw me out. We're married." Mr. Vincent's smile was cold. "Actually, Miss Harrison filed for divorce 3 hours ago. Our legal team handled it personally, given the documented abuse, fraud, and the prenuptial agreement you signed, which, I might add, you violated in multiple ways. You have no claim to anything. The marriage is being dissolved, and you will receive nothing." "Fraud?" Darnell's voice cracked. "What fraud?" "You married her under false pretenses," Mr. Vincent explained patiently, like he was talking to a child. "You claimed to love her, but our investigation shows you were already planning to divorce her and take half of what you thought she might inherit from her grandparents' small estate. You didn't know about the Harrison fortune, but your intent to defraud her of her grandmother's modest savings is well documented in text messages to your mother and Miss Moore here." Beverly made a sound like a wounded animal. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with horror. The social standing she valued so much was crumbling in real time. Candace was already backing toward the door. Her survival instincts kicked in fast. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "I was deceived. I thought—" "You thought you were taking someone else's husband because he had money," Lenora said quietly. "You knew he was married. You knew he was cruel to me. You participated in my humiliation because you wanted what you thought he could give you. And now you're running because you realize he has nothing to offer." Candace's face flushed with shame, but she didn't stop moving toward the exit. Beverly tried one last desperate move. She rushed toward Lenora, dropped to her knees in a theatrical display. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know who you were. If you had known I was rich, you would have treated me like a human being," Lenora finished for her. "But because you thought I was poor, it was okay to call me worthless? To treat me like trash? To destroy my confidence and my peace?" Lenora's voice was still quiet, but it carried through the room like thunder. "You knew I was a human being. You knew I deserved basic respect. That should have been enough. My bank account shouldn't have mattered." Beverly opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Security guards gently but firmly lifted her to her feet and began escorting her toward the door. Darnell stood frozen, his mind trying to catch up with the reality that had just destroyed his entire world. Everything he thought he knew was a lie. The woman he had belittled, abused, discarded. She was the most powerful person in the room. She had always been. "I loved you," Lenora said, looking at him with something that might have been pity. "When I had nothing to offer you but myself, when I was just a nurse with a kind heart, I loved you completely. And you couldn't see the value in that. You couldn't see that what I was offering you was worth more than all the money in the world." "Lenora," Darnell's voice broke. "I didn't know. If I had known—" "You would have been kind to me. You would have valued me. Don't you see how broken that is?" Lenora shook her head sadly. "Real love isn't about what someone can give you. It's about who they are. And I was always worth loving, Darnell. You just couldn't see it. Security closed in around him. Mr. Wilson, the elderly guard, looked at Darnell with disappointment. I've worked at this estate for 40 years, he said quietly. I watched Miss Lenora's parents love each other with everything they had. Real love, sacrificial love. They would be so proud of the woman she's become, and so ashamed of what you did to her. Darnell was escorted out with Beverly and Candace, all three of them in various states of shock and horror. The ballroom remained silent as they left, 500 elite guests watching the fall of the Washington family in real time. When the doors closed behind them, Lenora finally let herself breathe. Mr. Vincent touched her arm gently. Miss Harrison, are you all right? I will be, she said softly. Then she looked at him with clarity. I want to honor my parents and my grandparents. They taught me what really matters. I want to use this wealth the way they would have wanted. Of course, Mr. Vincent said with a small smile. The foundation is yours to direct however you choose. Lenora looked around the ballroom at all these people who had watched her get pushed to the floor and done nothing. This gala will continue, she announced, her voice carrying through the room. All donations tonight will go to scholarships for orphaned children. In memory of my parents, and in honor of the grandparents who raised me to know my worth, had nothing to do with money. The room erupted in applause. It was guilty applause, awkward applause, but it was something. In the days and weeks that followed, the Washington family fell apart completely. Darnell lost everything. The news spread instantly. He had abused a billionaire heiress, tried to defraud her, publicly assaulted her. His job fired him within 24 hours for reputation damage and behavior incompatible with company values. His business partners dropped him like he was poison. Every door that had once been open to him slammed shut. The luxury apartment he lived in, Lenora's trust had been paying for it the whole time through a shell company. She had been supporting him without knowing it, and now that support was gone. He was evicted within a month. His bank accounts were frozen pending the divorce and investigation into potential fraud charges. Lawyers swarmed him like vultures. He had nothing left, not his job, not his home, not his dignity. Candace abandoned him faster than lightning. She released a public statement through her lawyer. I was deeply deceived by Mr. Washington and am horrified by his treatment of his wife. I was unaware of the full situation and deeply regret my involvement. I wish Miss Harrison healing and peace. It was a calculated move to save her own reputation, but it didn't fully work. People remembered. Her name was attached to the scandal, and that stain didn't wash off easily. She kept her job, but her career trajectory flatlined. Nobody wanted to be associated with the woman who helped a man abuse his wife. Beverly lost the thing she valued most, her social standing. Every club, every organization, every social circle she belonged to quietly removed her from their lists. Nobody wanted to be friends with the woman who called a Harrison worthless. Her phone stopped ringing. Her invitations dried up. She became invisible in the world that had once revolved around her. She tried to reach out to Lenora, sending letters, having friends make calls on her behalf. All of them said the same thing. I didn't know who you were. Please forgive me. Lenora didn't respond. Not because she was cruel, but because there was nothing to say. Beverly had shown her true character when she thought Lenora had no power. That truth couldn't be erased with apologies. 3 weeks after the gala, Darnell showed up at the mansion gates. He looked like a different person, thinner, defeated. The confidence and cruelty had been replaced with desperation. Security called Mr. Vincent, who called Lenora. "He's asking to speak with you," Mr. Vincent said gently. "Do you want to see him?" Lenora was quiet for a long moment. "No," she said finally. "I don't. There's nothing he can say that I need to hear." Mr. Wilson delivered the message to Darnell personally. "Miss Harrison doesn't wish to speak with you, sir. Please leave the property." Darnell broke down. Right there at the gates, he fell to his knees and cried like a child. "I lost everything," he sobbed. "I lost her. I lost everything I thought I had. I didn't even know what I had. I didn't know." "You didn't lose a fortune, son," Mr. Wilson said quietly, his voice surprisingly gentle despite everything. "You lost something more valuable than any amount of money. You lost a woman who truly loved you when you had nothing to offer her but yourself. That kind of love. Most people spend their whole lives searching for it, and you threw it away like garbage." Darnell looked up at him with hollow eyes. Can I at least tell her I'm sorry?" Mr. Wilson was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. Sorry is what you say when you accidentally step on someone's foot, not when you spend years destroying their soul." He helped Darnell to his feet with surprising kindness. "Go find a different life, son. Learn from this. Become a better person. But leave Miss Harrison alone. You've taken enough from her. Don't take her peace too." Darnell left, and he never came back. 6 months passed like a gentle exhale. Lenora stood in a cemetery in rural Georgia, placing fresh flowers on 2 graves. The headstones were simple: Thomas Harrison and Ruth Harrison, loving grandparents, her real family. "Thank you," she whispered, kneeling in the grass. "Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for raising me to know that my worth isn't in what I own or how much money I have. Thank you for teaching me that true wealth is who I am when nobody's watching." The silver pendant hung around her neck, catching the afternoon sunlight. She touched it gently, feeling the connection to parents she never knew and grandparents who gave her everything that mattered. She had established the Ruth and Thomas Harrison Foundation, using her family's wealth to provide scholarships for orphaned children. She built community centers in underserved areas, created programs for women escaping abusive relationships, funded hospitals and schools and shelters. She did it all quietly, no publicity, no fame. She worked personally with the foundation, meeting with the children who received scholarships, listening to their stories, encouraging them to believe in their own worth. She lived simply, despite having billions at her disposal. She bought a modest home in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. She drove a regular car, wore regular clothes, lived a regular life, except for the extraordinary impact she was making in the world. The Harrison estate mansion was converted into a community center and museum. The ballroom where she had been humiliated now hosted events for children, celebrations for families, gatherings that brought joy instead of pain. The marble floors where she had fallen now echoed with laughter instead of cruelty. She stood in that ballroom one evening watching children run and play in the space where she had once been broken. A little girl ran up to her, no more than 8 years old, with bright eyes and a huge smile. "Miss Lenora," the girl said excitedly, "thank you for letting us have my birthday party here. This is the most beautiful place I've ever seen." Lenora knelt down to the girl's level, smiling. "You're very welcome, sweetheart. I'm glad you're having fun." "My mama says you're a kind person," the girl said seriously. She says you help people because it's the right thing to do, not because you want people to say nice things about you. Lenora felt tears prick her eyes. Your mama sounds very wise. She is, the girl agreed. Then she hugged Lenora quickly and ran back to her friends. Lenora stood up, watching the children play, and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and being okay with it. She touched her pendant one more time, and in her mind, she heard her grandmother's voice. I finally understand, Grandma. True wealth is who you are when nobody's watching. She had been pushed down the stairs of her own mansion by a man who never knew her worth. But she didn't rise to prove him wrong. She rose because she finally knew her own truth. She rose because she understood that her value had never been in what others saw in her. It had always been in who she was when she was alone with herself, when the world wasn't watching, when there was nobody to impress and nothing to prove. Darnell and Beverly and Candace lost everything, not because Lenora destroyed them. She never lifted a finger against them. They destroyed themselves the moment they chose cruelty over kindness. They lost everything because they valued the wrong things and hurt people they should have loved. But Lenora, she found everything, not the money, though she had plenty of it now. She found peace, purpose, healing. She found the strength that had been inside her all along, just waiting for her to recognize it. And maybe that was the greatest inheritance of all,